when we left off, we were looking at this image and we talked about how could you tell someone or inform someone how would you describe the position of the little metal bear compared to the position of the big bear? What are some things you would think of when you go to do that? Haley.
The 2 inches apart from each other.
Okay, they're 2 inches apart. How do you come up with 2 inches apart?
Because there's 2 dotted lines, and it goes from the 4 and the 5, and because it counts the 4 and the 5, that's 2. So
Okay.
it's 2 inches.
So she's thinking 2 inches apart. One thing I love that you're including, Haley is including the distance apart they are, right? When you're talking about the position of something, is that a good thing to include? Whether it's being able to give the exact distance because there's measurement available, or just being able to say right next to, or a little bit away, or super far away, or a mile. Distance is a great thing to include when you're talking about the position of something, especially when it's relative to something else. Now, before we move on, I do want us to look at this because this is what we're going to jump to next too. I don't agree that they're 2 inches apart, and I want to show you why. Okay? So when I look at it, this is where it's saying our bear's nose ends. Where's that at? 3 and a half. So that's at the 3.5 mark. The little spongy bear's booty or leg is right here, and that's a little past 4.5. So instead of these being 2 inches apart, to show the distance between them, where the metal bear ends and our other bear begins, it's a little over an inch. Because we have only traveled from the 3.5 a little past the 4.5. So that's only 1 inch apart. That's kind of confusing because you're right, it does go from over here by the 3 almost to the 5, but they're not this far apart. They're only this far apart. Does that kind of make sense a little bit?
Yeah.
So when we are looking at how far apart something is, we have to think about that space between them, not just where we start and where we end. Okay? Or, well, we do have to think about where we start and where we end, but not only that. We have to be thinking about that space in the middle there. That is only an inch right there. So distance is an awesome thing to include, but we also want to think about or start to pay attention a little bit about how we're going to measure that distance. So awesome. When we're talking about the location of the metal bear to the spongy bear, what else can we say? Zoe, what would you include?
The spongy bear is 5 inches.
Okay, he's 5 inches long.
Yeah.
Is that what you're thinking, or what? What do you mean?
It's 5 inches from the metal bear.
So we just talked about that. He's not 5 inches from there. We talked about being able to say from here to here is only an inch that has passed. So he's only an inch apart. But so distance is one thing we can talk about. What else? Viola. Yep, so that's that distance. The little bear is 1 inch away from the other bear. What else could we include that's not talking about our inches now? Right.
The metal bear. Its direction is south.
Okay, you could include that piece. Now, depending, because this is on a piece of paper, that's going to change all the time, right? So instead of saying south, what could you say?
The metal bear is
use those describing words that tell us being able to put in there.
The sponge bear is next to the metal bear.
Okay, so when I think of next to, I think like side by side. Would you agree?
Yeah.
So even though this kind of is next to, look at where they're facing. How else could we describe this a little bit more accurately? Griffin?
The sponge bear is to the right of the metal bear.
Okay. Kind of, that's better at least, because when we're sitting like this, that's the metal bear is going to be to the right every single time, no matter, right, I had mentioned that north, south, east, where we turn, right? That changes, but now it's always going to at least stay to the left. What else could we include, Emery?
They're both looking right.
They're both looking the same direction, right? They're both actually looking left. No, they're looking right. Now I'm turned around because I have the different hands going this way. The metal bear is
behind
the sponge bear. The sponge bear is in front of them. That changes the position that people are in as well, right? We're going to do a quick position of this, and we're going to play a quick game dealing with position. Are you ready?
Yeah.
So I'm going to get it set up, and then we're going to do our game, and then we have we'll see how much time our next activity takes. Okay, we're going to play a little game, right? Number 1, stand in front of number 2. You were able to know exactly what to do because of those direction words. And I have a group of 3, so you guys have 2 1s or 2 2s? 2 1s and 2. One of you be a 2. One of you's a 2. Who's the 2? Who's the 2?
No, you are.
Who's the 2? Quick, quick. Emery, you're the 2. The other ones are 1s. Emery, you're a 2. 1, stand in front of the 2s. There we go. I eliminated your problem by helping you out there. Good, great. Now, 1s and 2s stand next to each other. You knew exactly what to do because of direction words. 1 and 2 be about a foot apart from each other. I think we need to practice with measurement a little bit. A foot's only about as long as our book is.
Really?
So you're getting a lot closer to each other than you probably were before. Good. 3, 2, voices up. 1. You knew how far to stand apart from each other because of distance words. Distance words helped you know how far to be apart from each other. Let's go ahead and go partner 1 and 2. 1 be higher than partner 2. There you go, Griffin. Good adaptation. You fixed it up. 1 needs to be higher than partner 2.
He's higher than me anyways.
That works. Okay. Partner 1 and 2 face the same direction. Now, Cooper and Kyler, you're facing opposite directions. There you go. Thank you. 3rd graders, you knew what to do purely based on direction words or distance words. Which way to face, which way to be next to each other, how to be next to each other. Those words described what you were going to be doing with your partner today. Thank you. Go ahead and have a seat. So when we go to describe the position of something, we want to be thinking about the direction it is compared to something else and the distance compared to something else too. So for this guy, our little bears, we can talk about the direction. The metal bear is behind the sponge bear. The sponge bear is in front of the other bear. Good. So we use those direction words, and then we can also think of those distance words as well. And we can think about, this one's tricky because of where those lines come up, but they are about an inch apart, maybe a little bit more. 3rd graders, we are going to go back to our unit opener, and we're going to think about that snail again. So in your scientist notebooks, I want you guys to open back up to our snail. This is on page 4. Thank you. On page 4, we have our snail. Every single person can be in there, be a scientist notebook. How far did the snail travel? And I want you to think about what we just talked about with the bears and their rulers as we look into this a little bit, okay? So we look at it, and I want us to think about where that snail is starting. Do we want to think about his tail or his head?
His head.
Okay, so his head. Where is his head when he starts?
Number 2.
His head is at the 2. If he starts at the 2, where does his head end at on the second ruler?
7.
So if you go from the 2 to the 7, how many inches did you travel? Go ahead and figure that out. This is just basic counting math, right? How many inches did they travel, and how did you figure it out? Joey, what did you do?
I think it was 5 because 7 minus 5 equals 2.
Ooh, that's a good way. He said, I think it's 5 because he ends at 7. 7 minus 2 equals 5. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Is that what you said? 7 minus 2 equals 5? Okay. Because that takes away this piece over here that was already traveled. So 7 minus 2 equals 5. That's a great one. Viola, what do you think and how do you know? Okay. So you went like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, good. Chloe,
I thought it was 7 centimeters.
do you still think it's 7 centimeters? No, what do you think it is now?
I think it's 5.
Okay, that's great. Before, a lot of us did think it was 5, but he wasn't starting at the 0 before, or before a lot of us thought it was 7, because was he starting at the 0?
No, he's
He's starting at the 2. So that starting point at 0 would be he hasn't moved at all yet. Now we're saying at the 2 he hasn't moved at all yet. So to go from 2 to 7, that's 1 inch, 2 inches, 3 inches, 4 inches, 5 inches before he stops. How many of you would need to change your thinking now that we've learned a little bit more about distance and measuring? Yeah, totally okay. That's why we go back and we revisit a little bit so we can see kind of where we're going with it. Perfect. Go ahead and close up your notebooks. We will stop.